Good morning, everyone. Jane Monreal here with you at 9 a.m. on a Wednesday morning, and it is hot. We have a busy morning. We're going to start with some breaking news. A call into the WCNC newsroom here in Charlotte from Dallas that a lot of people are experiencing water issues, and they think it might be a water main break. So from Dallas, though, we did get a word from our producer that we are currently experiencing a water main break. This is the 900 block of Lower Dallas Road. So that's Lower Dallas Road. It is closed due to a water main break. Crews are on site working to repair the issues as quickly as possible. But yes, the water is being temporarily cut off there at the water plant until they can fully repair this. So we're going to keep you updated when residents can get the water and get more information as we find available. So we thank you viewers for WCNC Charlotte calling into the WCNC Charlotte newsroom and giving us that update. So we'll update you here on WCNC Plus. Also here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus, the president making his full day at NATO at The Hague in Netherlands for the NATO summit. He is expected to speak, hold a press conference sometime in this 9 o'clock hour here.
It just got updated to 9:15, I'm told.
Oh, okay, Carly, thanks. So 9:15, so we will await that press conference and bring that to you live. In the meantime, Alice Barr has the latest from Washington here on Live Impact News.
President Trump at the NATO summit in the Netherlands with key allies touting a diplomatic win between two sworn enemies as a fragile ceasefire between Israel and Iran appears to be holding. Recounting how he urged Israel's prime minister to back off a planned retaliatory strike.
I said, you got to get them back. And they came back, and it was a great thing, and it's going very well.
At the same time, there are new questions about how effective U.S. airstrikes on Iranian nuclear sites were, with a preliminary assessment by the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency estimating Iran's nuclear program has been delayed by 3 to 6 months. That's according to 3 people with knowledge of the report. The White House calling that assessment flat out wrong.
We hear it was obliteration. It was a virtual obliteration.
But one of the sources said core pieces remain intact. Questions also over what Iran may have moved from its nuclear sites before the U.S. strikes.
I believe they didn't have a chance to get anything out because we acted fast.
Top Democrats in Congress accusing the Trump administration of misrepresenting the truth about the damage, questioning why the White House delayed planned briefings lawmakers have been demanding.
What are they running away from?
The head of the United Nations nuclear watchdog pointing to an important degree of visible damage.
The Iranian nuclear program has been set back significantly.
While acknowledging no one could fully assess the destruction underground at the key Fordo site, pressing Iran to resume diplomacy for a long-term solution. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
And again, we will bring you the president's live comments from the NATO summit as soon as we see it up here on the board, estimated to be around 9:15 this morning. All right, it is hot out there, isn't it? And Chris Mulcahy telling us we are breaking a record. That can't be a good thing as we are weather alert this morning, Chris.
Yeah, no, it's not, because I want you to look at these numbers. So these are the active numbers right now as we are speaking. It's 88 degrees actual air temperature.
Okay.
We have a dew point of 76, which, by the way, is tropical and miserable. And it feels like 99.
Oh.
We have a real feel of 99 degrees, and it is 9:04, y'all. What's going on?
What is going on?
And this is the reason why we had a heat advisory that wasn't just for yesterday. Most heat advisories you're going to see are usually noon to 8 because that's where you have the hottest part of the day. This one went through the overnight because there was a chance that you weren't going to cool down much. So as I mentioned, we broke a record. The coolest, or excuse me, I haven't said the word cool. I don't know why I said that. The warmest low. Yeah, what is
in our
that?
vocabulary today.
You know about there's always the coldest temperature, the hottest temperature for a day. Well, there's also the warmest low and the coldest high. Well, I'm not going to talk about the C word, but the warmest low ever to happen in Charlotte history for for June 25th was back in 1952, 75 degrees. This morning we only dropped down to 79, so we crushed it. There's still a chance we drop down to maybe 77, 78 by just before midnight, so this number could change, but for sure we're going to have the warmest low in Charlotte history for June 25th. And then going forward, looking at these numbers again, likely this is going to be not just the hottest feeling day of the year so far. We're also dealing with right now the muggiest air we've had in 2025. So before today, the highest the dew point, all you have to know about that dew point, I'm a big guy as far as the dew points go because it really measures about how you feel. The highest we've been so far is 73. We're at 76 degrees right now. So that means the muggiest air that we've had so far the year is right now, this hour. If we were at 74, 75, it's actually gotten muggier. So this is actually a cause of concern that before we even get to noon, we could be feeling like 105 to 108 in some spots. So I want everyone just to stay especially weather alert because that moisture value is actually going up. It's not coming down much. Now, it will start to temper its expectations a little bit, but I think that 100 mark is actually going to be more like 103, and that 103 is more like 105. So again, 105 to 108 is the hottest that we're going to be feeling for at least the day. Now, this is actually a 1-2 threat because we also have a chance for storms a little bit later on in the afternoon as well. So you got to stay weather alert. So I want to show you some of those futurecast runs that we're seeing. For one, I'm going to slow this one down. This is a different one that likely isn't going to be the scenario, but this one pops up a storm around 5 in Lancaster. It dances around for a few hours, and then it gets out of here. I'm only showing you this because the threats that we have for severe storms is actually going to be a chance for flash flooding as well. Now, we don't have the right situation that we're primed for flooding because we haven't had a lot of recent rain, so that's good for us. But still, if you dump 2 inches of rain in an hour, it's going to lead to some localized flooding because it overwhelms the drains. So the most active time, the time you have to be most weather alert, is between 2 and 8 o'clock. So it's a double alert day, as we've been calling it, because you have the heat threats, but then quickly that could change over to a storm threat. And gusty winds, I think, is going to be the highest threat that we have here, along with those heavier rain showers and also some dangerous lightning. Destiny Richards was talking about lightning all of this morning because of what happened in South Carolina, where 20 people were evaluated and 12 people were brought to the hospital. We have had 4 lightning fatalities so far in 2025, but what I think is most interesting about those stats is that we've actually seen a lot of lightning strikes and people affected the most over this past weekend. That there were several in Florida that just recently got impacted by that. We had the South Carolina event, so just kind of a friendly reminder to when you hear thunder, roars, get indoors. But sometimes there's something called bolts from the blue. And literally in Florida, this is a really tragic situation, is somebody died when it was under blue sky. That sometimes you don't hear it. You don't get that warning. And this is a very rare case, but it can happen. And there's only so much you can do at this point. It's just kind of just like a divine intervention. But that was a sad story there. Not saying that's going to happen to you. But today you already know that there's going to be lightning in the area. So that's why, again, this graphic's so important. The biggest window for those storms of frequent lightning is 2 to 8. And actually, the more humid it feels, that gives more energy to the electrons, aka more lightning. So I think it's going to be a pretty frequent light show that happens overall. Okay, so let's get to your futurecast, the one that I like the most. It's a chance for severe storms. That's what this yellow is representing, and that's for all of our areas, so that's easy. Here's a look at 1 o'clock. I think that you might see a storm or two popping up in the radar at that point, but it's really after 1 to 2 that we start to see isolated storms. Any one of these isolated storms, I think at this hour potentially could bring some hail. Oftentimes when you have mid to the upper 90s, it melts a lot of the hailstones below the severe criteria. But watch what happens around 3 o'clock. If you're watching, focus where you live. Find your county, and this will kind of give you an example of what you could see. Notice how between 3 and 4, it kind of clears out completely along the I-85 corridor in Mecklenburg County. That's not a guarantee that that's going to be the case in the scenario, but this is how today is going to play out. Some of you are going to have a trace of rain to none at all. Others are going to have up up to an inch to an inch and a half of rain in a quick period if a thunderstorm's sitting there for an hour or two. This is the type of deal that these are slow moving. They kind of move on their own. They just kind of bend and twist in their own fruition. It's really impossible to track. So that's why I've given you such a big window of opportunity. I think by 10 o'clock, we're pretty much storm free. Just letting you know that's going to be a possibility because it's hot, it's humid. And if we did not have the storm potential today, I think today would actually be hotter than yesterday. Yesterday, we did not hit that 100-degree mark, but hey, close enough. It was still 98 and it felt like 105. But today, I think it feels just a little bit hotter just because it is more humid. There's a look at how much rain you could see. Again, it's all over the place, some up to an inch, some barely anything at all. This is also one quick weather IQ moment that I want to share with you. About 90% of all the wind damage that we receive actually forms in this fashion. These are called wet microbursts. So a wet microburst, literally all the rain-cooled air within a storm from evaporational cooling gets so dense that eventually it drops out. It's interacting with the dry air in the mid-levels, and then eventually it plops to the ground. That's usually the process of rain. Sometimes it can spread out, form new storms, but in this fashion, when it happens in such an isolated area, it can crash to the ground, causing winds up to 60 to 125 miles per hour. I don't think we're going to be on the upper end of that, but I've seen as much as 100 miles per hour before. I've seen one of these before blow boats literally out of the water into trees. So again, I don't think you're going to be that extreme, but gusts to about 60 plus aren't out of the realm of possibility. I personally had one of these at my house that took off the top of the tree and it crushed a fence. Oh, no. So that's why I just want everyone to be alert that this is actually one of the higher microburst forecasts that I've seen really so far over the last month or so. So just want everyone to be alert. We got a high pressure system, little ring of fire, classic setup, and then we have that double threat again, the heat advisory until 8 o'clock and then a chance for severe storms. Then we're cooler.
What?
I've never been so excited about 90 degrees, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so 90 is my quote cooler, but at least we're back to normal, more of the lower 90s. Tomorrow I still think feels like the triple digits at times. We still have a chance for a stronger thunderstorm, but at least things are getting a little bit more business as usual. Most 7 days, by the way, for July and August will look like this minus the 97. Usually have the lower 90s with a chance for storms each and every day. So welcome back to the usual summer, but we have one more day to stay weather alert and to stay cool.
Well, you said, last week or whatever, expecting this, that it's that first shock to the system when we have this kind of heat wave, so mid-90s. So, yeah, 90s going to feel fantastic, I would imagine.
Yeah, and it's about perspective. I think it's like same thing during winter. Whenever you have that first cold day, you're like, oh, okay, I can deal with this. Now, the first hot one, I'm sorry, you're never going to get used to it feeling like it was. Like, even I know people from Texas, they only can take so much once they're getting into their heat advisory criteria. But yeah, no, I'm not sure if you noticed how muggy it was today. I think today feels worse.
Yeah.
Today feels worse than yesterday. So if you didn't like yesterday,
You're not going to like today.
Today's worse. And here's the deal. Oh, no. The thunderstorms and clouds could cool us down, but if you get rain, then you have the evaporation from that makes it even steamier. So it might be cooler, less of a heat index, but then I think it feels worse because of the moisture content from that rain. So it's just like, if I were to give my Nick ick, it is today. And this was one of Nick's icks, by the way. So
All right. Wednesday.
You're going to sweat no matter what.
You're going to sweat.
Seriously.
You're going to sweat.
And that's the problem why we have this heat advisory is because you get to a certain point that your sweating actually slows down after a while because it can only do so much because there's so much moisture around you. So, but yeah, no, you're going to sweat today for sure. So,
Tropics are okay?
So yeah, I can bring that up recently.
Oh, okay.
Talk about.
So I know some people are traveling. They got their cruises planned. They're going to the Caribbean, all of that jazz.
All right, post-tropical Andrea. She didn't even last a day.
Oh.
So
I don't even remember Andrea being mentioned.
No, you wouldn't because
Okay.
I mentioned it on Monday because I was like, oh, this is a terrible looking storm. I don't even know if this is going to be named. Yep, it hit it for, I think, 12 hours. I don't know the exact timing. It was less than 18.
It just happened or something when we came on at 12:30.
Okay.
Because Becca came in and was like, this just happened.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And now it's already
Gone.
out the door.
When I got in, it was post-tropical Andrea. Okay. So that means likely it was anywhere from 12 to 18 hours that this thing lasts. It was probably one of the ugliest signatures I've ever seen from a tropical system. And no offense, Andrea, You're beautiful inside, but actually no. For the
No,
satellite,
you're not.
that's the problem. The satellite imagery was not beautiful inside
yeah,
or
not
out.
the
It's the
storm.
only time we'll say that about a woman or anybody. Just letting you know.
Okay.
But yeah, no, this was just not a very good looking storm. Here, I'll show you what it looks like now. Yep, that's it.
Oh.
Yeah, usually you have at least a circle of something or lose that. Yeah, it's no more. It's just a circulation now in the middle of the Atlantic. We also refer to these as fish storms.
storms, yep.
But if you're wondering who's next, Barry.
Who is up?
Barry.
I hope Barry isn't mean.
Barry doesn't sound mean.
There's just certain ones, and it happened last year. I didn't want Milton to be a big deal because I've met one Milton in my life, and it was one of the sweetest guys I've
Yeah,
ever
I
met.
know. A very,
Who's
very
a
sweet
mean
Barry.
Milton?
Yeah, no, all Barrys are the same
All
way.
berries are nice.
I've never met a mean Barry.
Right.
All right.
So, not saying that I've met mean Dexters or Aarons. I've actually never met a Dexter before, to be honest with you.
No, I just know the show.
I
Yeah.
saw the show as well.
But I always have my ones that I watch the most. I truly think I'm watching out for Imelda the most because I names are retired more than
yeah.
anything. We've been trending some M names recently, so I got to look out for Melissa. And for the internet's sake, I hope it does not cause a big deal because Karen.
Karen's involved in
The amount of Karen jokes that are going to come out here, and
Yeah,
if you're not
right.
concerned, pretty much a how do you describe Karen in pop culture nowadays?
I don't know.
Yeah,
Just
pretty
look
much
back.
a woman that complains about things that doesn't really need to be complained about.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
So it's,
the one,
Titled.
it's
the-
generic
and-
now.
yeah, it's very generic, but it's well known for Gen Zers. So I'm trying to keep you woke if you didn't realize that. What was
Try
the
not to feed
like?
the monster.
Yeah, because we learned about kikiing
Yep.
earlier,
Yep.
so I wanted to add on to that. But real quick, back to the main story about today. It feels like 99, and then it'll feel like 100 to I think even up to 108 earlier on the day before we have the storm chances. So it's not
Ew.
often that we have the
108.
double. I know, gross, right?
Oh my goodness, and a steamy 108, not a Arizona desert 108.
No,
too.
no. See that's why everyone from
Not
the
that that's better.
Southwest says, "Oh yeah, no, it's a dry heat." No, you're absolutely right because yesterday was gross, and I truly think that these values should be higher because the fact that the dew point is at 76 right now is astronomical. The highest that we had all of last year was 77, so we already have that this morning. Feeling like 99. I don't think I personally can remember seeing a 99 dew point at 9 a.m. in the morning.
Oh, wow.
So today is definitely the worst feeling day. So I just want to kind of drive that point home.
Okay.
And since we're pretty loose here, can I share a text message with you?
Sure.
This I got a kick out of this. I read this earlier. So from Kim, she said, "Morning. JT just woke up and I had WCNC Plus on,
Oh, good.
and he saw Ben and he pointed at the TV and jumped up and down, and then asked." And then Kim asked if he wanted to see Daddy, and he said no, he wanted a different movie.
Wait,
Cause like I see you enough.
Yeah.
Change the channel.
right.
He's a big Ben and Larry fan.
Oh, excellent.
So he went to the baseball game where Larry threw out the first pitch for the
Yeah.
Charlotte Knights when Larry was doing his passing the torch on to me.
Mm-hmm.
And he fell in love with Larry. He's known Larry for a while, but he fell in love
I
with
thought he was
Ben.
Larry.
Yeah. So
Oh,
every time he sees
great.
Ben, he said, "I want to see Ben." So I
not
wanted
Dad.
I wanted to share that because I thought that
Very
was really
cute.
funny.
From the mouths of babes.
Yeah.
All right, JT. How cute is that? Speaking of Larry, he was. You're aware of Charlotte Squawks,
Yeah.
the big show. So
Mm-hmm.
I was there yesterday, and so was Mr. Larry Sprinkle.
He's everywhere.
Oh
I
my
know.
gosh!
He's everywhere.
In the middle of the show, people. I mean, it was part of the presentation, but people stood up, chanting "Larry, Larry."
Awesome.
Mike Collins brought him up on stage, did a whole, Larry got his flowers, and it was great. And they said, speaking of, with Larry leaving, who's replacing him? Majestic Storm. Put a Majestic's picture up on stage.
Oh, that's funny.
And I thought, well, it's not replacing, but we just needed
I-
to
I
shift
knew it-
along some people.
I knew what they were meaning.
You knew what they
yeah,
were
of
talking
course.
about.
Because Mulcahy isn't anything. It's an Irish name.
Could be a
like
storm.
a sprinkle and a storm we use in everyday vocabulary.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not
You
going to be
see
it's
where
like,
they're
watch out
going.
for this Mulcahy.
You never
watch
know.
out.
Maybe people
Mulcahy.
say that. I don't know, but
All right, very cute. Thank you, Chris and JT et al.
shout out. Take care. I love being here as always.
We love
See
having
you
you
again
here.
tomorrow.
Bye.
All right, thank you for that info. All right, appreciate you, Chris, as we are back here in the Live Impact studio coming up on 9:20. Again, we are waiting for the president to speak at the NATO summit, his first full press conference and his first full day there in the Netherlands. I'm glad we saw a picture there of Dallas because I want to move an update here, just show you a map now. If you haven't heard, there is a water main break, and it is a concern for residents that we're hearing. People are just sort of really concerned about not having water in this heat. But the update here, as we're looking at a map, water main break in the 900 block of Lower Dallas Road. So it is closed due to water main break. Crews on site working to repair this issue as quickly as possible. But as we know so far, at this moment, water is being temporarily cut off at the water plant until the water line can be fully repaired. And we'll update you here on Live Impact News as soon as we learn more and can give you any updates. I want to get you out to the NATO summit right now. Just take a peek in here as things are getting underway. The room is certainly busy and full. Let's just take a quick listen. And so we are waiting for the president again, scheduled to speak at 9:15 this morning.
Well, now it says it's pushed to 9:30.
Okay, so very good. I'm glad we're getting the updates.
Right. It appears to be kind of just, kicking the can down the road here.
Sure. Okay, so we know that he will world leaders here to talk about everything, right? But Iran, Israel certainly taking a lot of that focus. Center stage, we expect to hear comments, the latest from the president, as we do know that a ceasefire as of now is holding in place, but still Washington says that the strikes on Iran's nuclear plants aren't as what the president said, that they were obliterated and that this will end the war. So there's some sort of back and forth there. But right now, we do know that the ceasefire holding for now. We did have our Vanessa Rufus talking to a professor, UNC professor, who was in Israel just a little while ago. He got back and was able to give this interview to Vanessa.
He was there when
it
missiles
happened.
started
Okay.
to come out.
So he was
yeah.
able, obviously, to escape. He is back in the Carolinas and talked to our Vanessa Rufus yesterday. So this was on WCNC Plus, a previously recorded interview with a UNC professor, now back in the U.S. from Israel.
As we're joined by UNC law professor Michael Gerhardt, because we're talking about Israel and Iran, the war, the conflict that's escalating there. And Mr. Gerhardt, you just returned back from Israel, and from my understanding, you were actually there as some of the retaliatory strikes were being lobbied on Israel. So you're back home now, obviously. What is this? What was that situation like? I mean, you were there when this was kind of coming to a head.
So we had been in Israel for 2 weeks, teaching and meeting with scholars and other sort of people in the government, and actually participating in protests, among other things. But the Thursday, our last Thursday there, is when Israel launched its attack. And it's fair to say, I think everybody, certainly around us and everybody in Israel, did expect some kind of retaliation. That, unfortunately, that's the dynamic in that region. Come Friday, we were still trying to make plans to leave the country. Our flights got canceled, so we had to come up with a plan to sort of drive to Amman, Jordan, which we were going to do on that Saturday, but we had to survive between that Friday and Saturday. And Friday, night is Friday, particularly in the afternoon, and more so in the night. The bombing started, and these are ballistic missiles coming into Israel. And my wife was in one part of town, I was in another part of town. We each sort of got ourselves into bomb shelters and tried to keep in touch that way. It certainly felt to me when a ballistic missile exploded what seemed to be above me, my whole building, including my bomb shelter, shook. And then my wife fortunately made it all the way to our place so we could be in the bomb shelter together. And all that night, all Friday night, there was just bombing. So we basically didn't sleep. And the smartest thing to do in that circumstance is just stay in the bomb shelter. So we survived that Friday, and then Saturday we started to drive into Amman, and we were able to fly out of Amman, Jordan, on Sunday.
I mean, the description, of going through that experience, I mean, it stops your heart to think about. And I mean, you touched on something that, keep in mind, of course, we know this from following this day by day, but I feel like the cycle on this story is moving quickly. It seems like there are new developments, but I remember kind of around the time frame that you were just describing there was a lot of talk about how Americans and or other folks who were trying to get out could get out because there were closures at the airport. So could you walk us through that situation of just trying to figure out how you were going to get home? I mean, obviously you were able to do so inevitably, but I mean, that was a big concern for a long time and likely is for still so many people.
Yes, you're absolutely right. In fact, we still get texts and emails from friends or other people we met in Israel on sort of how they can get out. I think it's becoming a little easier right now than it had been when we were there, which is now more than a week ago. So on Friday, I think the last Friday we were there, in the morning we got news that Ben Gurion Airport closed, which meant our Delta flight got canceled. We were already thinking of alternative plans. I just shut off a couple emails to the embassy. I didn't expect much, and that low expectation was justified when later in the day the U.S. Embassy sent out a message that we are not going to help Americans leave Israel, which basically meant, of course, we were going to be on our own. And I think we're already reconciled to that. Fortunately, we have some friends in Israel, including a really good friend who is pretty well connected in terms of the routes both into Israel and out of Israel. And with his help, we were able to schedule on Friday a series of drivers who would then sort of take us from Tel Aviv to Eilat, which is in southern Israel, and then we crossed over the Jordan border around Petra, and then we were met by a different driver who was able to then drive us from southern Jordan to northern Jordan, or where Amman is. And Amman obviously is a very large city of roughly 4 to 5 million people, and its airport was both closing and opening. So the night we arrived, Saturday night, it was open, but then it closed later in the night. Sunday morning, first thing, it was closed, and so we were not entirely sure what to do, but we talked to some people at the hotel and who told us they thought the best thing for us to do was just simply take a car to the airport, and if the airport opened, then we'd be able to fly out. The advice we got was also, if we don't go at that point Sunday morning and the flight did take off, we'd probably never make it. So we went to the airport. I was tracking the airport itself on the drive, and it opened roughly in the middle of our drive to the airport. We got to the airport, went through 4 security stations in Jordan, considerably more cumbersome than we experience here in the United States. Plane took off about an hour late, but it did take off, and fortunately, it landed, and we got home. I think we were maybe there were probably no more than 3 or 4 Americans on that flight, and it was full.
I mean, did you ever anticipate that you would have to go through all of these measures just to make it back? When you first set out on this trip, I mean, and looking back now on what you went through to get home and all that you experienced while you were there, I mean, did this trip turn out so much different than you thought?
I would say yes and no. Iran will be retaliating during the time we were there. But I should note that the time we were there, Israel was still in a state of war, but its war hadn't yet totally focused on, or singularly focused on, Iran. One thing about being in Israel is you are fully aware of the possibility of attacks. Also, however, you're around people who have been through this kind of thing before. So everybody around you is quite calm, and that actually helps you stay calm. And I think we were calm and very focused throughout. And I will say we got tons of messages while we were there from people who lived there and lived in the region, asking if we were okay, did we get out okay, and so on. And so there's a sense of, for lack of a better word, support that you have under conditions like that, which maybe helps your mindset.
I guess on that note, since you are still in contact with folks back there, and you kind of alluded to this fact that there is a mindset, maybe an acknowledgement of the realities of the tensions that are ongoing and constant in that region. Do you feel like that mood is still the same at this point? Do you think things have maybe evolved, in the last several days? Do you think that folks might still be feeling calm and collected?
It's a good question. Our impression has been, and we were also in Israel last summer, but our impression last summer and this summer has been that Israeli people, generally speaking, are traumatized. They got traumatized on October 7th, and there's really been no let up under those circumstances. The military is quite exhausted because there are only so many people they've got available in reserves and otherwise, sort of to fight the war. So you get this sense of almost a fatalistic sense from a lot of people, which is, okay, if today's the day I go, so be it, but we're going to fight and try and survive it as best we can in the short term. And so I think we did expect, or it was not surprising, something might happen while we're there, because it is that part of the world. It's just, it happened in a different way than we expected, and then we had to kind of hustle, but with the support of friends, we were able to make it back.
I'm just curious, as someone who clearly has connections and ties to the region and the area, how closely you've been watching since then, all of the developments that have taken place, including the U.S. actions that we saw over the weekend, the decision to make those strikes on suspected nuclear sites. Have you been following that very closely? And if so, what are your thoughts on how this is playing out at this point?
Yes, I have been following it closely, in part because we still have close friends. My wife has family there, so we want to, we just want to make sure everybody's okay and safe, and they have been. In terms of I guess the military sort of actions, one thing that is clear from our experience. It's one thing if another country is shooting drones at Israel, because Israel has this famous dome that helps protect it from drones. The dome works with ballistic missiles, but not quite as well. So imagine that a ballistic missile is somehow damaged or explodes in middle of air. You still have the missile itself, which is going to land somewhere. And that could be very dangerous. So we kind of followed it to get a sense of, okay, how safe is it? How are things changing? I think the U.S. involvement was a bit of a surprise to the extent that it was. But I think with the current mindset of the current government in Israel, they are very much sort of in a war mentality. And I can't say that most Israelis support that. But on the other hand, you could also say in the United States, a lot of people don't support what the administration is doing. It's somewhat paralleled in Israel.
Well, I feel I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this, just given the fact that you are a law professor with UNC, and we know that one of your foci is constitutional law. There's been a lot of dialogue over whether there was some sort of violation with the president ordering these strikes over the weekend. We know, just as several moments ago, House Speaker Mike Johnson basically defended the president's decision, saying that it's within President Trump's Article 2 powers as commander-in-chief to order this, but we see folks who are not quite feeling the same way. So I'm just curious what your expertise tells you about the situation and this particular thread and dialogue that is a big topic right now with this conflict.
I appreciate the question. I think one challenge of being a constitutional law professor right now is to hear things that are just dead wrong. And from people who should know better. The quote you just gave from the Speaker Johnson, or the reference to him, he's completely wrong. And it's not just me speaking. The Supreme Court in the early 1950s decided a very significant case called the Steel Seizure case, involving President Truman's seizure of control of the nation's steel mills. The Supreme Court struck down his executive order. And in doing so, the Supreme Court declared that a president has no inherent emergency power. So much for Speaker Johnson's comments. Beyond that, the Supreme Court said a president's power must derive from one of two places: the Constitution itself or a statute. So in the current circumstance, there's nothing in the Constitution itself which would authorize a president to take unilateral action. The Supreme Court has never acknowledged that that would be permissible. And our best understanding of the Constitution is that it wouldn't be permissible. The president's job is to implement congressional policy, not to be developing the policy himself in the absence of congressional action. The question in President Trump's case is there a statute or a resolution that somehow supports his actions in this instance? And so far, what has struck me is that the administration has been dead silent about that. You would think if it had authority, it would just trot it out. But it doesn't. It's not trotting any authority out, which does reinforce the suspicion that this must be unconstitutional.
Now, I mean, coincidentally, and you won't be able to see this on your end, just based on the technological setup we had, but we just put up a little box in the corner of our screen. It's actually a live feed of House Speaker Mike Johnson speaking at this very moment. He was actually talking about this topic. And I was just curious to get your take, because we heard him trying to make comparisons. For example, this is another quote from him. President Biden ordered strikes on Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. President Obama launched an 8-month-long bombing campaign in Libya to oust Gaddafi. President Clinton initiated air patrols and airstrikes in Bosnia and a bombing campaign in Yugoslavia. So he says this is a continuation of the quote, every one of those actions were taken unilaterally and without prior authorization from Congress. Do you feel like those are comparable comparisons? Or, I mean, I guess what's your take? Or do you have a response to that particular statement?
Well, I have two responses. The first is the speaker is engaging in this sort of view or this practice, which I guess has been pretty popular with him and others, and that is to immediately point to other people doing something wrong and then claiming somehow that ought to give his president some authority. That doesn't work in constitutional law. We also learned at a very early age, 2 wrongs don't make a right, 5 wrongs don't make a right. So I find that argument to be very, very weak. But the other thing is the examples he used are probably not the best examples he could have found, because each of the presidents you just mentioned had some kind of congressional authorization or treaty or other law that they were acting pursuant to. That's not the case in this situation. Obviously, after 2001, a lot of presidential actions were undertaken consistently with a joint resolution that had authorized the use of force in response to the attacks on 9/11. So that covers a lot of the presidential activity post 9/11. And otherwise, I think that it's what Speaker Johnson has not said, and this is telling, is what the specific authority is for President Trump to do what he did. That's the simple question. It should have a simple answer.
Before we get to our next question, because this discussion is super interesting, and I know we have a lot of viewers here on Live Impact News who want to continue this dialogue. So I just want to point out that we're about to transition to our 4 o'clock newscast here on WCNC Plus. Our discussion here with Michael Gerhardt is going to continue on our secondary channel. This is on demand here on WCNC Plus, so basically go to the main console and select the secondary channel, and you can continue to listen in on this dialogue here. My next question here for you, Professor, given all that you've said about your thoughts on the actions taken over the weekend and your belief, you feel like this was not within the president's frame of power, where do we go from here, I guess? Because we hear a lot of and they feel like they say that they're trying to get information, that they want to know like how this was done. That's a lot of the dialogue that we're seeing from folks who oppose this decision that was being made. But what sort of checks and balances might be in place to I guess correct things if as your opinion was that this was not done correctly?
Well, I think the main thing is that a president's constitutional duty is to enforce or implement the policies that Congress has made. And the president has a lot of, that gives the president a lot of authority to have that duty. However, in this instance, Congress hasn't had a chance to formulate a policy. And this is Constitutional Law 101. Congress makes the law, which means Congress makes the policy. A president does not make the policy. It doesn't matter to me who the president is. If a president is acting unilaterally without congressional support or authorization to use force, that president is in all likelihood acting unconstitutionally.
So as this situation continues to develop here, I'm just curious what you as an expert in this field will be looking out for to see what happens next. Who will you be watching for action, and what might you expect to see coming next, in this specific dialogue that we're seeing over powers of the president?
I would personally sort of love to see Congress using its own power and Congress getting involved rather than sitting on the sideline and letting the president usurp its power. There's a lot of stuff that Congress could be doing, for including not just hearings, but actions. it's just curious to me why we're not seeing that. Apparently, the Senate's holding a hearing on Joe Biden's mental capacity when he was president. Strikes me as a more timely thing to think about. Maybe we should have a hearing on the current conflict. This is all compounded by the fact when the president's representatives or officials, the people who work for the president, show up in Congress, their presentations usually are very disappointing because they just are partisan talking points, and they seem to really think their main job is to attack Democrats and be disdainful of Democrats in Congress. I'd like to see everybody remember that they have a duty to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Yes, members of Congress are partisan, but it'd be great to see them do their jobs, and great to see them do their jobs not so much for the sake of partisanship, but for the best interests of the American people.
If we can go back to your recent trip to Israel, I mean, obviously there's a travel advisory out for folks who are traveling. I mean, pretty much it sounds like everywhere at this point. There are some concerns. Thoughts on staying in touch with folks. I mean, it seems like you're probably not going to get back there anytime soon. How do you go from here as far as, keeping in touch with the people that you know back there and how they're doing?
Oh, I'm somewhat fortunate in that, and I guess we're all somewhat fortunate that we have these means, including WhatsApp and texts and emails, which allow us to be able to communicate rather easily with people who share those sort of programs. So communicating has remained very easy at this end. You're right, we are not going back anytime soon. I think one thing I would certainly offer or suggest to other people is to take warnings about travel very seriously, particularly sort of once you're outside the United States, and I wouldn't say necessarily in enemy territory, but you're outside the United States in a place where war is happening, you're not going to necessarily be able to rely on the embassy to help you. It certainly didn't help us at that time. And so I would say just try not to go anywhere you don't have an exit plan regarding.
Michael Gerhardt, we appreciate your time here on Live Impact News. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with before we wrap things up this afternoon?
Just happy to be back in North Carolina and looking forward to teaching in the fall.
All right. Thank you so much, and glad that you made it home safely as well.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And that was our Vanessa Rufus talking to the UNC professor yesterday after his return back from Israel when those strikes started happening. Glad to see him safe and sound back on home soil here. So people are questioning, how are the stocks doing? How are futures doing? Futures actually in the positive. We now know that this morning after the bell rang 17 minutes ago, New York Stock Exchange opening up minus 37 right now. Also, gas prices is in the conversation. How does this affect your oil prices between Iran and Israel, their conflict? We will play this interview for you now. Do want to let you know that the president is set to speak very soon at the NATO summit. We will go to that live as soon as we see the president walk up to the podium with other world leaders from the Netherlands. In the meantime, get you to Nick Sturdivant's interview with Gas Buddy here on WCNC Plus.
Hey, Matt. Dude, there have been so many questions, concerns, information, misinformation about everything surrounding the conflict in the Middle East as it relates to oil prices. What is the latest? Because I feel like it's so hard to keep up with when it comes to this stuff. What can you tell me? Can you put some context around what's happening right now?
It changes by the hour. We've had a ceasefire and some violations on both sides of the ceasefire. The president's currently not the happiest camper in the world about that, understandably so. But the reality is this, conflict or no conflict, oil prices may be reacting to that just a touch, and we understand that. But for the moment, prices are still on their way down compared to what they were even 24 hours ago by quite a bit. And with regard to gasoline and other aspects, we had this question a lot yesterday. Should I fill up my tank? I'm concerned. I'm anxious. The answer is, if you need gas today, get gas today. If you need gas tomorrow or Thursday, get gas tomorrow or Thursday or Friday. There's not going to be a huge interruption per se of any kind of an aspect. In fact, no interruption at all. So what we're looking at now is a lot of anxiety amongst the consumer, very understandably so. Ongoing conflicts are not yet in the history books to read. So we have to look at that and just say, whatever it is that's going on over in the Middle East, yes, it's a little nerve-wracking, it's a little concerning, especially with the U.S. involvement over this past weekend, but the reality of the situation the same. Gasoline is flowing. Price a moment, honestly, are going to start falling as of the way things are moving over the past 24 hours. At this time yesterday, I was saying gas prices are looking to increase, but actually, over the past 24 hours, we've seen a huge drop in crude oil prices, a large drop in wholesale gasoline prices, and consumers may start seeing that price reflecting at the local pump as early as the end of this week and continuing to go from there. Really interesting dynamic that we're seeing right now. We have the conflict going on, and does the ceasefire hold? Well, that's a great question, and I don't think anyone knows the answer, including President Trump, Israel, or Iran. I really don't know if at any point anyone has a direct answer for that, but I can tell you that as far as anything domestically speaking with oil and gas, we have nothing to be concerned about.
It's tough when you I guess we saw it a lot during the elections, right? You go on social media and there are reports from who knows who, right? Just random folks putting out this information. It might not necessarily be true. Does that make that tough to kind of get the correct information out there?
So just giving thanks that we have people like myself, Patrick Tahan, and other aspects to just simply bring about accurate information. So, it actually, I guess, maybe job security at this point, it does help for those types of things. But, we're here to just more or less give the information and just let it factually stand on its own merit. I'm sure that misinformation, whether it's perhaps a direct misinformation campaign from a foreign entity or just the next door neighbor deciding to misbehave themselves, whatever the case may be, yes, there's a lot of information out there, and we certainly understand that. That's why it's important to pull open that Gas Buddy app, look at different things. Just remember, look for yourself. Look at the price point at the pump. Look at the other aspects with your own two eyes to disprove any of the false information that is being spread out there about a wide variety of different topics, not just oil and gas prices, understandably. So I do understand that misinformation can create a moment of pause for folks. You may want to kind of lean into that and go, well, what if that's true? What if that's true? But the reality is, look at all the misinformation we've been fed in the past, and none of it turned out to be true. And again, that's something that you can look into technical history book for and be able to see the end story to all of those things. And it turned out to not be true. So let's just look at the facts, look at the evidence that we have, look at the gas prices, look at the crude oil price per barrel, and just take a deep breath, and everyone just keep going on about our business.
Scenario where gas prices spike. There have been talks. Again, we are in a limbo now, ceasefire, a disruption in the ceasefire, a possible closure of the Strait of Hormuz from Iran. Is there a possible, I'm throwing out these scenarios, but is there a possible scenario where that happens?
Well, I'm not sitting in a situation room for any country at the moment to know exactly what's going on by the second, and I certainly don't have satellite access to know either. But I can tell you this: let's say something like that were to happen. we don't really get much oil out of the Strait of Hormuz. Yes, the crude oil supply, there's a 20 to 25% of the global supply goes through the Strait of Hormuz. Would our prices increase? Theoretically speaking, in a hypothesis situation, sure, they probably would increase without a problem. Would we have a supply issue? No. Why? Because most of our crude oil comes either domestically produced here within the United States or by friends that like us, Canada, Mexico, and other countries along those lines. In fact, in the Midwest, for example, a lot of the gas refineries utilize Canadian oil in order to produce gasoline across portions of the Midwest and the Northeast. Likewise, other places in the country, the Southeast, the South, may use crude oil produced from places like Texas. So we have a lot of levers to pull, so to speak. Would we run out of product? No. Would we possibly see a price increase? More than likely, without any question mark on that. But again, that's all a hypothesis at this point. I will say, I would argue that Iran capability of closing the Strait of Hormuz, yes, it is a narrow body of water, but you're still talking multiple miles that they would have to figure out how to close. Secondly, that would be economic suicide on their part because they also need the Strait of Hormuz just to as a nation. It's not just crude oil that obviously moves through the strait for Iran. They have all kinds of products and goods and whatnot that have to make its way through there just to supply their nation with things. So that would not be a wise move on in any way, shape, or form. That would actually be quite devastating to them as well. So we have to keep that in mind whenever we start feeling that fear and that saber rattling, if you will, by different comments. A lot of that is just talk, because the reality is that would really just put them into a lurch, really far more than it would America.
One more question before I get you out of here. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. A lot of folks, school just got out. This is just a general question. We are in summer. It feels like the dog days of summer right now.
Oh, yeah.
Because it feels like over 100 degrees today here in Charlotte. I say all this to say folks are still going to make trips, make plans on the road. Any advice for folks as we head into the summer?
Yeah, so we are, again, seeing that fluctuation back and forth within the conflict. We may see some prices at this particular point for the next week or so, probably going to decrease unless something crazy happens this afternoon or tomorrow or whatever the case may be. The best thing you can do in order to help yourself economically speaking, drive efficiently, make sure that you are looking out and setting that cruise control when it's appropriate to kind of help yourself save some fuel and get some better efficiency out of your particular vehicle. Use the Gas Buddy app. Find the cheapest prices in your area. And if you happen to be planning a trip, you can actually use the app to plan your trip out and use a map situation through there as well. And it will even show you what the cheapest gas is along your way as you are navigating through that trip. And it will help you find that gas station whenever you are arriving. So there's a lot of particular tips. Obviously, look and make sure that your tires are properly inflated. Take it to the next, the shop and get the oil change and all of those types of things. But as far as the efficiency goes, that's about the best that we can offer in that regard. It's about the best that anybody can do with regard to gas prices. The app, the Gas Buddy app, is certainly something that will keep you, because you, the consumer, are the one who reports those prices. So we know that they are accurate, and we obviously, we're just here to kind of help folks get the cheapest gas possible.
And you are watching a previously recorded interview with our Nick Sturdivant and Mike, an expert with Gas Buddy, and seeing how the conflict in the Middle East is going to affect gas prices here at home. Want to let you know that the president looks like he is up on the podium at the NATO summit in the Netherlands. Let's go ahead and listen in here live on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
Noticed. Listened to a lot of wonderful speeches from the heads of a lot of wonderful countries. But I want to thank you for joining us at the conclusion of a highly productive NATO summit in the Netherlands. I want to thank them for the royal treatment they've given us. Couldn't have been nicer. And it's a beautiful country, really a beautiful country. Coming in, I saw the most beautiful trees. In fact, I want to bring some back with me. I want to also thank, I had breakfast this morning with the King and Queen, and they're incredible people. I said, you're central casting, beautiful people, great people, big, beautiful heart. And I enjoyed that. And also NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, who's been terrific. He's been a friend of mine, used to be right here running this wonderful country. Now he's the NATO Secretary General. He's doing a fantastic job. And the Prime Minister, we appreciate everything you've done. And as you know, last weekend, the United States successfully carried out a massive precision strike on Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities, and it was very, very successful. It was called obliteration. No other military on earth could have done it, and now this incredible exercise of American strength has paved the way for peace with a historic ceasefire agreement late Monday, and we call it the 12-day war. Spoke to a few people. I guess that just sounded like the right name. It was a 12-day war. And we think it's over. I don't think they're going to be going back at each other. I don't think so. Not only have we dealt decisively with the critical threat of Iran's nuclear program, which was what I wanted. I said, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I've said that for 15 years, long before I decided to do the political thing. But we've also reasserted the credibility of American deterrence, which is like no other. The people at NATO said there's never been anything. You know, I rebuilt the entire military during my first term. And we have a great military. We have great generals. I got to know the good ones and the bad ones. We kept the good ones. Over the past 2 days, I was honored to participate in the NATO leaders meeting and also had extremely good individual discussions with the King and the Queen, Secretary General Rutte, and the Prime Minister. Great discussions. Very knowledgeable people. Major focus of our conversations at the summit was the need for other NATO members to take up the burden of the defense of Europe, and that included the financial burden. As you know, it was 2%, and we got it up to 5%. And they said, a couple of them came up to me, one in particular said, sir, we've been trying to get it up to 3% for 20 years, and we haven't been able, and you got it up to 5%. So they're going to be, most of them, I guess almost all of them, are going to be contributing now 5%, a number that people are surprised at, but you need it today. The United States accounts for 2/3 of all NATO defense spending. And since I began pushing for additional commitments in 2017, believe it or not, our allies have increased spending by $700 billion. I said to people, you don't have any money, and a lot of them weren't paying. And so I started the process, and I picked it up as soon as I got back, which is 6 months ago. And following my election last November, almost all have accelerated plans to reach the 2%, 3%, 4%, and then ultimately, very quickly, 5%. And all of this is going to be done very quickly, almost immediately. You probably know this as well as I do. I'm sure they've been talking about it. It's really been a big focus. In a very historic milestone this week, the NATO allies committed to dramatically increase their defense spending to that 5% of GDP, something that no one really thought possible. And they said, you did it, sir, you did it. Well, I don't know if I did it, but I think I did. This will be known as the Hague Defense Commitment, which is pretty good, pretty appropriate. When the allies reach this number, it will add more than $1 trillion a year. Think of that, $1 trillion per year to our common defense. And this is a monument really to victory, but it's a monumental win for the United States, because we were carrying much more than our fair share. It was quite unfair, actually. But this is a big win for Europe and for actually Western civilization. For years, past administrations failed to get most allies to contribute even the 2%. I remember when I came here, we had 4 countries that were up to 2%, and I remember Poland was there. A couple of them were there, and but most of them were. We had 28 at the time, as you know. It's increased a little bit, and they've agreed now to more than double their budgets in all cases. And Europe stepping up to take more responsibility for its security will help prevent future disasters like the horrible situation with Russia and Ukraine, and hopefully we're going to get that solved. Last week they lost 7,000 soldiers, mostly soldiers, but they're also getting hit in Kiev. They're getting hit in some of the towns also. And that means life. Life is disappearing also in the cities and towns. Should have never happened, would have never happened if I was president. I said it 1,000 times. And it never did happen. It's never even thought about. But it's vital that this additional money be spent on very serious military hardware, not bureaucracy. And hopefully that hardware is going to be made in America because we have the best hardware in the world. You saw that where 14 missiles were shot at us the other day. And they were very nice. They gave us warning. They said, we're going to shoot them. Is 1 o'clock okay? They said, it's fine. And everybody was emptied off the base, so they couldn't get hurt except for the gunners. They call them the gunners. And out of 14 high-end missiles that were shot at the base in Qatar, all 14, as you know, were shot down by our equipment. Amazing stuff. Amazing that they can do. It's like shooting a bullet with a bullet. It's the same thing if you think about it. 14 out of 14, and they weren't even that surprised. I said, do you do that well often? They said, we pretty much do, sir. The Ukraine crisis has also highlighted the urgency of rebuilding our defense industrial base, both in the United States and among the allied nations. We cannot afford to be dependent on foreign adversaries for critical minerals. And as you know, we made a deal with Ukraine to take a vast amount of the land they have for minerals. We need it. And once again, I want to thank all of the people in the Netherlands, incredible people. It's a great place. And all of the NATO allies for the tremendous summit that we just had. A letter just came in, and a statement came in from the Atomic Energy Commission of Israel. And I just wanted, this is an official letter, and they're very serious people, as you know. The devastating U.S. strike on Fordo destroyed the site's critical infrastructure and rendered the enrichment facility totally inoperable. It was devastated. We assess that the American strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities has set back Iran's ability to develop nuclear weapons for many years to come. This achievement can continue indefinitely if Iran does not get access to nuclear material, which it won't. It's so sad that that whole thing had to go. But I just want to thank our pilots. You know, they were maligned and treated very bad, demeaned by fake news CNN, which is back there, believe it or not, wasting time, nobody's watching them, so they're just wasting a lot of time, wasting my time. And the New York Times, they put out a story that, well, maybe they were hit, but it wasn't bad. Well, it was so bad that they ended the war. It ended the war. Somebody said in a certain way, you know, that it was so devastating, actually. If you look at Hiroshima, if you look at Nagasaki, you know, that ended a war too. This ended a war in a different way, but it was so devastating. Also, they have, out of Dubai, just came that Iran's foreign ministry spokesman, this is Iran's foreign ministry, says its nuclear installations were very badly damaged by the American strike. So what bothered me about these reports with fake reports put out by the New York Times, failing, I call it the failing New York Times because it's doing terribly. Without me, it would be doing no business at all. But, and by fake news, CNN and MSDNC, all of these terrible people, you know, they have no credibility. You know, when I started, they were at 94% credibility, the media. Now it's at 16%. And I'm very proud of it because I've exposed it for what it is. But when I saw them starting to question the caliber of the attack, was it bad? Well, it was really bad. It was devastating. They were obliterated. In fact, you can't get into the tunnels. They just put that over. That just came out. They can't. There's nothing. There's no way you can even get down. The whole thing is collapsed in a disaster. And I think all of the nuclear stuff is down there because it's very hard to remove. And we did it very quickly. when they heard we were coming. It was, you can't move it. Very hard, very dangerous, actually, to move to. And they also knew we were coming, so I don't think too many people want to be down there knowing we're coming with the bunker busters, as we call them. We're the only ones that have them. We have the best equipment, best nuclear equipment, and we have the best equipment in the world. And by the way, we can't forget our submarine, which was out there, submarines actually, but submarine was out there. We shot 30 rockets into an area, every single one of them. I think it was almost 400 miles away, I think, Pete, right? 400? And long. It was in the ocean, long ways away. And we shot a total of 30. Every single one of them hit within 9 inches from where it was supposed to be. It took out a lot because we didn't do just 4, though. We did 2 others in addition, which hadn't been completely destroyed. So we hit them with a submarine from hundreds of miles away. Amazing, just amazing equipment. Greatest submarines in the world. Nobody's even close. They're 20 years behind us when it comes to submarine technology. So that's one, and the other was from the Atomic Energy Commission, and they have about 3 or 4 of them now coming in from atomic energy commissions from various places. But the one that we have that just came out, we released it a little while ago, was from the Israeli Atomic Energy Commission, but numerous of them are getting to see the site, and the site has been demolished. And again, we had these brave patriots, these incredible flyers, these people that can fly a plane better than anybody can fly a plane, going into very hostile territory, flying into the territory that has got more missiles and things pointed at it, but it was very stealth. They didn't get to see it. It was dark. That's the amazing thing about the shots. They hit the shots perfectly, and yet it was dead dark. There was no moon. There was no light. It was virtually moonless. It was very dark, and the shots were hit perfectly. But when they get demeaned, and they were very upset about it because they knew how strong it would be. Back in Missouri, the pilots flew about 36 hours, 2 ways, far distance, and in those incredible B-2s. And we then had the F-22s, and we had the F-35s, and we had other planes, and we had, I think, a total of 52 tankers. That means the big tankers, because the refueling was a lot for all of the different planes that we sent. Incredible operation, and I have to say, General Raisin Cain was incredible. That's why he beat ISIS, and we beat ISIS in a matter of weeks. I was told it would take 4 to 5 years. We did it in a few weeks, and he was great. That's why he's the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff right now, because I had a very good experience with him. He knocked out ISIS in a period of literally a few weeks. Amazing. And it was supposed to take a few years, 5 years to be exact. So we had a great victory there, and we then came here, and I think we had a great victory here. But this is an ongoing project. This is the safety of Europe, the safety of the world. And they've raised it from 2% to 5%, something which nobody, and you're talking about over $1 trillion a year. So we're talking about a lot of money coming in from countries that we're not paying nearly enough to be effective. So I have, as you know, Marco Rubio with me, and Pete Hegseth, Secretary of State and Secretary of War. Should we say Secretary? You know, it used to be called Secretary of War. Maybe for a couple of weeks we'll call it that because we feel like warriors. It used to be called Secretary of War. In fact, if you look at the old building next to the White House, you can see where it used to be Secretary of War. Then we became politically correct, and they called it Secretary of Defense. I don't know, maybe we'll have to start thinking about changing it, but we feel that way. Do we have any questions, please? Wow. That's a lot of questions. Who's a nice person? Oh, you're not a nice person, but I'll let you ask one. Go ahead. What's he going to ask? He is not nice at all. I know him well.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time before flying home. You just said you believe the conflict between Israel and Iran is over. What makes you so confident it is? And what do you do if it isn't?
Because I dealt with both, and they're both tired, exhausted. They fought very, very hard and very viciously, very violently, and they were both satisfied to go home and get out. And can it start again? I guess someday it can. It could maybe start soon. I think a big telltale sign was when, as you know, Iran somewhat, by not much, violated the ceasefire. And Israel had the planes going out that morning, and there were a lot of them, 52 of them. And I said, you got to get them back. And they brought them back. They didn't do anything. They brought them back. It was very good. I thought it was amazing, actually. They have fought a hell of a war. They fought very hard. I think the war ended, actually, when we hit the various nuclear sites with the planes. And I just hope you people can give these pilots, these are the best pilots in the world. They're the best shots in the world. They call them shots. That's what they are. And wait a minute. And I just hope you can give them the respect they deserve, because they came home to fake news. And like, oh, gee, there was hardly any damage. The things are decimated. So, but I think, no, I think they're very much finished. I think Israel's going to get back to doing what they do, and I think that Iran's going to get back. You know, Iran has a huge advantage. They have great oil, and they can do things. I don't see them getting back involved in the nuclear business anymore. I think they've had it. They've been at it for 20 years, and I don't see that happening either. Now, if it does, we're always there. It won't be me. It'll be somebody else, but we're there. We'll have to do something about it. Yes, please, go ahead. Go ahead. Oh, fake news, CNN? Oh, yeah, here we go. Wait till you hear this question. You should really say how great our soldiers and our warriors are.
I think everyone appreciates our soldiers and our warriors. I do have two questions for you, Mr. President. You just cited Israeli intelligence on these attacks. Earlier, you said U.S. intelligence was inconclusive. Are you relying on Israeli intelligence for your assessment of the impact of the strikes?
No, this is also, Iran made the statement, and it's also, if you read the document that was given, that Pete can talk about if you'd like, the document said it could be very severe damage, but they didn't take that. They said it could be limited or it could be very severe. They really didn't know, other than to say it could be limited or it could be very, very severe. And you didn't choose to put that because it was very early after. Since then, we've collected additional intelligence. We've also spoken to people who have seen the site, and the site is obliterated. And we think everything nuclear is down there. They didn't take it out. Okay, question? Please, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah. Blue dress.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Yesterday, you said China can now continue to purchase oil from Iran.
Yeah.
Are you giving up on your maximum pressure campaign? Because there are sanctions right now.
With who?
On Iran.
No, look, they just had a war. The war was fought. They fought it bravely. I'm not giving up. They're in the oil business. I mean, I could stop it if I wanted. I could sell China the oil myself. I don't want to do that. They're going to need money to put that country back into shape. We want to see that happen. No, if they're going to sell oil, they're going to sell oil. We're not taking over the oil. We could have, you know. I used to say with Iraq, keep the oil. I could say it here, too. We could have kept the oil. No, China is going to want to buy oil. They can buy it from us. They can buy it from other people. But you're going to have to put that country back into shape. It desperately needs money. Yeah. Yeah, please. Here we go. I'm picking the beauties today. Go ahead.
Mr. President, Secretary General Rutte has described President Putin as an adversary, a threat, an enemy. Do you view him the same way? And in addition to that, you mentioned General Kane, your chief of staff, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
General Kane.
Yes. He has said that Mr. Putin has territorial ambitions beyond Ukraine. Do you view that in the same way?
It's possible. I mean, it's possible. I know one thing. He'd like to settle. He'd like to get out of this thing. It's a mess for him. He called the other day. He said, can I help you with Iran? I said, no, you can help me with Russia. Because, you know, in the last few weeks, we took care of India and Pakistan, Kosovo, Serbia. I think on Friday we have coming in the Congo is coming in, and Rwanda is coming in. That was a vicious war that went on, a machete war, heads chopped off all over Africa. They're coming in. We did 2 others in addition to that. Nobody's ever done anything like this. No, I consider him a person that's, I think, been misguided. I'm very surprised, actually. I thought we would have had that settled easy. I've settled 4 of them in the meantime. But he did call up, and he said, he's close to Iran. He'd like to help us get a settlement. I said, no, you help me get a settlement with Russia. And I think we're going to be doing that, too. Yeah, please. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. You've made clear your position on what impact the strikes had. I wanted to ask you what is next with Iran. For instance, is there any indication from U.S. intelligence that Iran was able to move any material?
No, just the opposite. We think we hit them so hard and so fast they didn't get to move. And if you knew about that material, it's very hard and very dangerous to move. It's called, in many people, they call it dust, but it's very, very heavy. It's very, very hard to move. And they were way down. They're 30 stories down. They're literally 30, 35 stories down underground.
You think you got it all?
Oh, yeah, we think we got it. We think it's covered with granite, concrete, and steel.
Can I ask you, are you interested in restarting negotiations with Iran? And if so, have they reciprocated?
So our people, Marco could answer this, but our people are not, I'm not. The way I look at it, they fought, the war's done, and, I could get a statement that they're not going to go nuclear. We're probably going to ask for that, but they're not going to be doing it. But they're not going to be doing it anyway. They've had it. They've had it. Now, maybe someday in the future we'll want that. But I've asked Marco, do you want to draw, I just asked him the question as we were walking on the stage, do you want to draw up a little agreement for them to sign? Because I think we can get them to sign it. I don't think it's necessary. Marco, do you want to talk about that, please?
Well, Mr. President, I think President Trump has shown a willingness to meet and talk to anybody in the world who's interested in peace. I don't know of any president that's been as willing as he has to meet with anyone and talk about peace. We'd love to have peaceful relations with any country in the world. And so obviously that'll depend on Iran's willingness not just to engage in peace, but to negotiate directly with the United States, not through some third country or fourth country process. But I know of no president, probably in our modern history, that's sought peace more than President Trump has.
Sounds like the door is open, but you're in no rush. Is that right? Sounds like the door is open.
I'll tell you what, look, we're going to talk to them next week with Iran. We may sign an agreement. I don't know. To me, I don't think it's that necessary. I mean, they had a war, they fought. Now they're going back to their world. I don't care if I have an agreement or not. The only thing we'd be asking for is what we were asking for before about we want no nuclear, but we destroyed the nuclear. In other words, that's destroyed. I said, Iran will not have nuclear. Well, we blew it up. It's blown up to kingdom come. And so I don't feel very strongly about it. If we got a document, wouldn't be bad. We're going to meet with them, actually. We're going to meet with them. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yes. Mr. President, Netherlands TV, thank you for visiting our country.
Good.
As I understood,
Thank you.
I, of course, I'd like to know how you slept last night at the House of the King.
Oh, I slept beautifully.
But probably a more serious question. I think you just had a meeting with President Zelensky. Did you discuss any ceasefire in this Russo-Ukrainian?
No. I wanted to know how he's doing. He was very nice, actually. We had little rough times sometimes. He was couldn't have been nicer. I think he'd like to see an end to this. I do. I think what I took from the meeting couldn't have been nicer, actually. But I took from the meeting that he'd like to see it end. I think it's a great time to end it. I'm going to speak to Vladimir Putin, see if we can get it ended. But look, these are brave people. They're fighting these wars all over the place. Last week they had, I guess, close to 7,000 young soldiers, Russian and Ukrainian soldiers were killed, 7,000 in 1 week. It's crazy. It's crazy. So I'll be speaking to Putin. No, I had a good meeting with Zelensky. And I had a lot of good meetings. We had a lot of good meetings with a lot of people, a lot of great leaders. But he's fighting a brave battle. It's a tough battle. Yeah. Go ahead, white dress.
Thank you. Ida Hallikainen from Finland, Ilta-Sanomat. You have played golf with President Alexander Stubb. How do you see Finland as a NATO ally and partner, and how would you describe your relationship with our president?
Well, he's a very good golfer, okay? In fact, he was on his college golf team. He went to a good college in the South, as you know, a very good college, and he was a good golfer. We had a good time. I think my relationship's great. I want to buy icebreakers. You know, you're very good at icebreakers. And I actually made him an offer. I didn't go to Congress. They'll try and impeach me for this. But there's an old, it's not old, it's fairly new, but it's used icebreaker. And I offered him about 1/3 of what he asked for. But we're negotiating. We need icebreakers in the U.S. And if we can get some inexpensively, I'd like to do that. Actually, they'll fix it up, make it good. Also, we may buy some icebreakers. You know, you're the king of icebreakers, that particular country. They make them good. They make them really good, and they know what they're doing. And so we're negotiating with them for about 15 different icebreakers. But one of them is available now. It's old, and it's old. It's like 5-6 years old. Now we're trying to buy it. I'm trying to make a good deal. It's all I do my whole life. My whole life, that's all I do is make deals. Yeah, please. Go ahead. Sir, go ahead.
Yeah, a question for NewsHour, Dutch TV. First of all, on Article 5, on your way here, you spoke about the commitment of the U.S. to Article 5, saying, I'll give you my definition once we're here. Yeah. What is your definition, and may the U.S. commitment to Article 5 change in case some of the NATO members do not reach the threshold that was discussed today? My second question is following up on a colleague on Iran. What intel reports do say that everything over there was obliterated?
Yeah, well, there are numerous of those reports, and they're coming out fast and furious. But the most respected ones we've already seen. And I will say that on a very confidential basis, they're looking at the reports, like numerous reports, and including people going to the site and checking the site. And they're going to be having, I guess you're going to be having over the next couple of days a full, you're going to encapsulate it. But no, the site was obliterated, just like I said it was. And just like the pilots should be given credit for. As far as Article 5, look, when I came here because it was something I'm supposed to be doing, but I left here a little bit differently. I said, I watched the heads of these countries get up, and the love and the passion that they showed for their country was unbelievable. I've never seen quite anything like it. They want to protect their country, and they need the United States. And without the United States, it's not going to be the same. And you can ask Mark, or you can ask any of the people that were there. It was really moving to see it. They love their country. They were so respectful of me because I'm the head of the United States. And I made, the King of Saudi Arabia, when I was in the Middle East, so I was in Qatar for a different reason, not a reason to get shot at. We were in there for economic development reasons, Qatar, UAE, and Saudi Arabia. All three leaders of those countries, and we took back $5.1 trillion into the United States. All three leaders said, you're presiding over the hottest country in the world. The United States right now is the hottest. Everybody wants to be there. Everybody wants a piece of it. He said, a year ago, your country was dead. You had a deadhead running it. You had a country that was dead, and it was dead. You had people pouring through the borders. You had inflation. You had everything. He said, you've made it in 5 months at that time. You've made it the hottest country. This is the hottest country in the world. The United States right now is the hottest country in the world. And when I was around that table, it was a nice group of people, many of whom I knew from previous. When I saw the passion they had for the country, almost everyone, and you probably have the tapes, it was very public, but almost every one of them said, thank God for the United States. Without the United States, they couldn't really have NATO. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. It will in the future because now they're paying much more money, but it wouldn't work. It was great. And I left here differently. I left here saying that these people really love their countries. It's not a ripoff, and we're here to help them protect their country. Okay, we'll do one or two more.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah. A question on Spain. Are you satisfied with today's...
Oh, I think Spain's terrible what they've done. No, I do. They're the only country that won't pay the full up. They want to stay at 2%. I think it's terrible. And, they're doing very well. The economy is very well. And that economy could be blown right out of the water with something bad happening. You know, Spain is the only country that, are you from Spain? Yeah. Good, congratulations. You're the only country that is not paying. I don't know what the problem is. I think it's too bad. So we'll make it up. You know what we're going to do? We're negotiating with Spain on a trade deal. We're going to make them pay twice as much. And I'm actually serious about that. We're going to make Spain, I like Spain. I have so many people from Spain that it's a great place and they're great people. But Spain is the only country out of all of the countries that refuses to pay. And, you know, so they want a little bit of a free ride. But they'll have to pay it back to us on trade because I'm not going to let that happen. It's unfair. It's unfair to NATO. All right, sir, please. Go ahead, right in the back. Yeah, you, tall one. The tall man.
Mr. President, Johannes Petra from Austrian National Television.
How are you?
You once said that you would end the Ukraine war in 24 hours. You later said you said that sarcastically.
Well, of course it was sarcastic.
But you've now been in office for 5 months and 5 days. Why have you not been able to end the Ukraine war?
Because it's more difficult than people would have any idea. Vladimir Putin has been more difficult. Frankly, I had some problems with Zelensky. You may have read about him. And it's been more difficult than other wars. I mean, look, we just ended a war in 12 days that was simmering for 30 years, frankly. We ended Rwanda and the Congo. It's coming to sign the documents. We've already signed basic documents, but they're coming, I think, to the White House on Friday. We ended Serbia was going to go at it. But maybe the most important of all, India and Pakistan. And that wasn't whether or not they may someday have nukes like we're talking about in the Middle East, like we're talking about with Israel and Iran. This is they have nuclear weapons. I ended that with a series of phone calls on trade. I said, look, if you're going to go fighting each other, it was getting very bad. You know how bad that last attack was. It was really bad. If you're going to go fighting each other, we're not doing any trade deal. No, you have to do a trade deal. I said, we're not doing any trade deal. And in fact, I had the general, who was very impressive. The general from Pakistan was in my office last week. You know, Prime Minister Modi is a great friend of mine. He's a great gentleman. He's a great man. And I got them to reason. I said, we're not doing a trade deal if you're going to fight. And if you're going to fight each other, we're not doing a trade deal. And you know what? They said, no, I want to do the trade deal. We stopped the nuclear war. Go ahead. Go ahead, Jeff. Here's another beauty, Jeff. He's a beauty, all right. Go ahead.
Mr. President, to follow up on Ukraine, will the United States contribute any more money to Ukraine's defense this year to the $5 billion that allies are giving? And one question, you had another meeting with the Dutch opposition leader, Mr. Wilders. Can you tell us about that meeting? And are you upset about his anti-Muslim stance?
I'm not upset about it. It's just his view. He's unhappy with the way things are going in this country and various countries. He was an opposition leader. And I was asked to meet with the opposition leader by the people that are running. I think they have some deal where if you have a meeting, you're supposed to meet with an opposition leader. I said, that's strange. We don't do that. But I met with I didn't know him. He seemed like a very nice guy, but he's in opposition to the current people, and that was set up by the current people. So I assume when I met with the Prime Minister, you're supposed to meet with the opposition. We'll have to try that sometime in our country. Let's not do it. But I thought he was very good. As far as money going, we'll see what happens. There's a lot of spirit. Look, Vladimir Putin really has to end that war. People are dying at levels that people haven't seen before for a long time. Go ahead. Go ahead. White shirt. Oh, she's all excited.
Okay. So, BBC News Ukrainian.
Where are you from?
I'm from Ukraine.
Oh.
So my question to you is whether or not the U.S. is ready to sell anti-air missile systems Patriot to Ukraine. We know that Russia has been pounding Ukraine really heavily right now.
Are you living yourself now in Ukraine?
My husband is there.
Wow.
And
I can see you it's amazing.
And me with the kids, I'm in Warsaw actually, because he wanted me to be.
Is your husband a soldier? No?
He is.
He's there now?
Yeah,
Wow, that's rough stuff, right? That's tough. And you're living here?
in Warsaw.
And you're a reporter?
I am.
Good. So let me just tell you, they do want to have the anti-missile missiles, okay, as they call them, the Patriots. And we're going to see if we can make some available. You know, they're very hard to get. We need them too. We were supplying them to Israel, and they're very effective, 100% effective. Hard to believe how effective. And they do want that more than any other thing, as you probably know. That's a very good question, and I wish you a lot of luck. I mean, I can see it's very upsetting to you. So say hello to your husband, okay? Thank you. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. You were criticizing...
Where are you from?
Bloomberg News.
Oh, Bloomberg. That's wonderful.
You were criticizing the Federal Reserve Chair before coming to this summit.
Yeah, I think he's terrible.
I was wondering if you've begun interviewing different candidates for the Fed pick.
Yeah, I know within 3 or 4 people who are going to pick. I mean, he goes out pretty soon, fortunately, because I think he's terrible. We have no inflation. We have a tremendous economy. Hundreds of billions of dollars of tariff money is pouring in. Factories are being built because they don't want to pay the tariffs, so they're building them all over the country. I think we're close to $15 trillion. I told you $5.1 trillion from the Middle East alone, but of investment money coming in. There's never been anything like that in the history of our country. But we have no inflation. And we have borrowing because Biden, stupidly, they did short-term debt. So we have borrowing coming up. And, you know, we'll go 10 years, maybe longer, maybe shorter, but we'll go a long period of time when we do the debt. And because of him, because of this guy, we will have to pay for years. We'll be paying for him. And I said to him, listen, there's no inflation. He says, but maybe there'll be some. That's true. I said, if there is some, what you do is raise the rate. I'm okay with that. You raise the rate in 2 years from now or in a year from now. But because the rate's high, we have to pay more for debt. It's pretty equal. In other words, if it's 4%, it's 4%. If you drop it a point, you'll pay 3%. So it's fairly equal, not necessarily, but fairly equal. So we're going to end up paying maybe 2 points or 3 points more. 3 points would be about $900 billion a year because of this very average mentally person. He's an average mentally person. I'd say low in terms of what he does, low. Low IQ for what he does, okay? Wait, so instead of paying $900 billion, we don't want to pay $900 just because he doesn't want to lower the rate. I said, if there's inflation in 2 years or 3 years or 1 year from now, you raise the rate, you take care of the inflation, among other things. But he's probably a very political guy, I guess. I don't know. I think he's a very stupid person, actually. All right, one more. Let's go. How about you? Go ahead. She looks so happy and everything.
Thank you.
So I
I'm
picked
from
her.
Spain, too. I'm Ana Buch from La Vanguardia. I wanted to know if...
You're where from?
Spain, too.
Ah.
I wanted to know if you want to...
That's the Spain corner right there. Shouldn't have said that. That's okay. I do like Spain, by the way. I think it's unfair that they're not paying, but go ahead.
Are you going to negotiate directly with Spain about...
I'm going to negotiate directly with Spain. I'm going to do it myself. They're going to pay. They'll pay more money this way. You should tell them to go back and pay. You're a reporter? You tell them to go back. They ought to join all of those countries that are paying 5%. Spain's going to be just about the only one that's not. They were the most hostile toward doing it. It just doesn't make sense to me. Okay. All right, Kelly, go ahead. Here we go. There's another one.
Hello, sir. Thank you
We
very
got them all today.
Okay. So, Mr. President, you talked about expecting some on-the-ground assessments at Fordo and other sites.
No, here,
Is that
here
Israeli and U.S.?
It's been obliterated, Kelly. It's been
What is your message then, sir, to the intelligence community when they present reports? You're not disputing the DIA report. You're just...
They presented a
exists.
report that wasn't finished. We're talking about something that took place 3 days ago.
I understand that, sir.
The
It's an
report was
initial
done
assessment. So
2
what
days
is
ago.
your-
Wait a minute.
Yes.
They didn't see it. All they can do is take a guess. Now, if you take a look at the pictures, if you take a look how it's all blackened, you know the fire and brimstone is all underground because it's granite and it's all underground. You don't show it. But even there, with all of that being said, the whole area for 75 yards around the hole where it hit is black with fire. The group that's run by this gentleman, in fact, you may want to talk about it for a second because we're going to issue a report. And I think it's not even a very exciting report at this point. It's been obliterated, totally obliterated. And they did a report, but it was like, if you look at the dates, it's just a few days after it happened.
Sir.
So they didn't see it. They said it may be very severe.
Understood. Do you have a message for the intelligence community, though, in terms of unvarnished information getting to you, that it's not...
I don't really have a message. I would say issue the report when you know what happened. I wouldn't say that it could be severe or maybe not. They use the word severe. It could be severe or maybe it's not. And so people like you picked up and said, oh, it's not severe. No, the report was not a complete report. Yeah, the message was probably wait till you know the answer before you...
And sir, did you not have a public component to your Zelensky meeting for a tactical reason with President Putin?
Let him answer this question.
Hello, Mr. Secretary.
Yeah. There's a reason the president calls out fake news for what it is. These pilots, these refuelers, these fighters, these air defenders, the skill and the courage it took to go into enemy territory flying 36 hours on behalf of the American people and the world to take out a nuclear program is beyond what anyone in this audience can fathom. And then the instinct of CNN, the instinct of the New York Times is to try to find a way to spin it for their own political reasons to try to hurt President Trump or our country. They don't care what the troops think. They don't care what the world thinks. They want to spin it to try to make him look bad based on a leak. Of course, we've all seen plenty of leakers. And what do leakers do? They have agendas. And what do? Do they share the whole information or just the part that they want to introduce? And when they introduce that preliminary report that's deemed to be a low assessment, you know what a low assessment means? Low confidence in the data in that report. And why is there low confidence? Because all of the evidence of what was just bombed by 12 30,000-pound bombs is buried under a mountain, devastated and obliterated. So if you want to make an assessment of what happened at Fordo, you better get a big shovel and go really deep, because Iran's nuclear program is obliterated. And somebody somewhere is trying to leak something to say, oh, with low confidence, we think maybe it's moderate. Those that drop the bombs precisely in the right place know exactly what happened when that exploded. And you know who else knows? Iran. That's why they came to the table right away, because their nuclear capabilities have been set back beyond what they thought were possible because of the courage of a commander-in-chief who led our troops, despite what the fake news wants to say.
But you're not disputing the report said what it said, even though it was initial.
The report said what it said, and it was fine. It was severe, they think, but they had no idea. They shouldn't have issued a report until they did, but we've gotten the information. I think Pete said it better than you can say it. And, you know, you should be proud, especially you, should be proud of those pilots, and you shouldn't be trying to demean them.
No,
those pilots flew at great risk, a big chance that they'd never come back home and see their husbands or their wives. Let me just tell you, you and NBC, fake news, which is one of the worst, and CNN, New York Times, are all bad. They're sick. There's something wrong with them. But you know what? You should be praising those people instead of trying to find some. By trying to go and get me, you're hurting those people. They were devastated. You know, I got a call from Missouri, great state, that I won 3 times by a lot. And I got a call that the pilots and the people on the plane were devastated because they were trying to minimize the attack. And they all said it was hit. But we don't think it was really maybe hit that badly. And they were devastated. They put their lives on the line, and then they have... And I'm not referring to you, but real scum come out and write reports that are as negative as they could possibly be. It should be the opposite. You should make them heroes and heroines. You should make them really people that they were so devastated when they heard this news. And you know what they said? One of them, I spoke to one of them, said, "Sir, we hit the site. It was perfect. It was dead on." Because they don't understand fake news, because they have a normal life, except they have to fly very big, very fast planes. but it's a shame. You should be making them heroes. All right, in the back. Go ahead, back, white, yeah. White jacket, yeah. Go ahead, give my mic. Hello.
Deborah Haynes from Sky News.
Good.
Mark Rutte, the NATO chief, who is your friend, he called you daddy earlier. Do you regard your NATO allies as kind of children?
No, he likes me. I think he likes me. If he doesn't, I'll let you know. I'll come back and I'll hit him hard, okay? No? He did it very affectionate. Daddy, you're my daddy.
Do you regard your NATO allies, though, as kind of like children, and they're obviously listening to you and they're spending more, and you're obviously appreciative of that, but do you hope that actually they're going to be able to defend themselves, defend Europe on their own?
I think they need help a little bit at the beginning, and I think they'll be able to, and I think they're going to remember this day. And this was a big day for NATO. You know, this was a very big day. They took it. One of the gentlemen said, you know what? We've been trying to raise money raise the rate for 30 years, he said, 20 years, from almost the beginning. And he's been there for a long time. He said, until you came along, it never happened. What you did is amazing. It's been sort of an amazing day for a lot of reasons, but also for that. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think they can do it without you, though, in the future? Can they do it without
Well, ask Mark. I mean, you have to ask Mark, okay? So we're heading back. We're heading back. I want to thank these two gentlemen behind me. They're incredible people, both of them. They've done a fantastic job. And Susie's in the front, and she's done great. And Monica, thank you very much. It was quite an exciting time. And we're going to be heading back. We'll be back soon, and we'll see you in Washington, D.C. Remember this, we have the hottest country anywhere in the world. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
You're watching President Trump just finishing up a press conference from the NATO summit in Netherlands, his first full day there for the NATO summit, answering a lot of questions from international media. Back out here on Live Impact News, it's 10:45 here in Charlotte. I'm Jane Monreal. Thank you for joining us this morning here on WCNC Plus and downloading the app. He did answer questions about Fed Chair Jerome Powell, who, by the way, at this moment is testifying right now in front of a committee. This is the Senate Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee holding a hearing on the semi-annual monetary policy. Let's go ahead and listen in here live on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
A lot of attention, a very small entity, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. U.S. economic data, which has always been independent. It's really been viewed as the gold standard across the globe. And frankly, the BLS data often is the guidepost that investors use regularly. BLS helps us get information about cost of living increases, policy making for you guys. It's used to adjust payments on the roughly $2 trillion in Treasury bonds. The truth is that the BLS data shouldn't be degraded on any basis, yet the administration is so dramatically, and I hope my Republican colleagues will hear on this, cut back the staffing at BLS, that the BLS has had to significantly cut back on the collection of critical price and inflation data. Normally, BLS staff, when you don't have all the data collected, will estimate about 10% of the inputs into the CPI. Now, with these cutbacks, they've had to estimate close to 30% of the data. That means faultier data. How can we grapple with this, and what does the undermining and staffing shortages at a BLS mean in terms of your ability at the Fed to do your job?
You know, we can still do our job. I would not want anyone to think that the data have deteriorated to a point where it's difficult for us to understand the economy as well as we can understand it, which is not perfectly. But the direction of travel is concerning. You know, the U.S. has been a leader globally in investing in how to measure the output of a modern economy, which is something that we've led the world in for a long time. And it really helps not just policymakers, but also businesses. If we have accurate information about what's going on in the economy, you're making decisions based on that economy, not just the Fed, not just you, but private companies as well. So I think it's I think it's something we should continue to invest in, and I don't like to see any deterioration in the public data, which has been the gold standard. The BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, and others have really been the bedrock that people really do look to as solid data that tell us what's
and these
happening
people
in the economy.
who do collect this input, who do some of this analysis, they are experts. They are not fungible. You fired one and hire another. I mean, there's an expertise here that has been, I think, being undermined. And again, you just look at the fact that if you have to do your estimates, move it from about 10% estimate to a 30% estimate, that is not good for the markets. Let me move to one other topic in my last minute. Stress tests, really important. Those of us who are involved in Dodd-Frank, really important as we try to particularly think about the most significant banks. But there has been concern, I've shared some of this concern, that the stress test process was so opaque that while the regulators may fully have understood, sometimes the very banks being regulated didn't understand fully the criteria. I know you're taking a look at how we can bring more transparency to the process. When do you think we'll see that, and what kind of changes do you think we'll make?
Well, later this year, we've said that we're going to, fully disclose the models, and that's the main thing. If you're going to set, it's like the IRS. If you're going to charge people taxes, you have to have the transparency about what that is. It's going to be the same as that. We're going to show how the calculations are made. And we're working on all that right now. We're also going to, we have a proposal out to sort of smooth the results of the test from year to year. So this is something we're working on hard and expect to have important progress later this year when we begin to publish the models.
I'm anxious to see it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Ricketts. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we were talking about tariffs a little bit earlier, the senator from Virginia talked about Australia. I will point out that Australia has, we bought about $28 billion worth of Australian beef, and they've bought exactly zero of ours. So there's an opportunity to be able to improve that trade relationship. So that's one of the things I hope will come out of the trade negotiations.
You will acknowledge there is, though, we actually have a trade surplus.
We actually have a trade surplus with Australia, that is correct, but we'd like to sell more beef to them. So that's an opportunity. But one quick question on that, kind of just following up on Senator Kennedy's line of questioning. So if a tariff was put in place and the prices went up, wouldn't that be a one-time event, right? Because after that, it would be baked in. It's just a one-time thing.
So it might well be, as I indicated in my opening remarks, it might well be a one-time event, but that isn't a law of nature. We would want to make sure of that. We were more sure of that back in 2018 because we'd had 40 years of low inflation. Coming off of a global inflation episode where we haven't fully returned to 2%, it's something that's a question we will approach carefully.
But if the tariff is only put in once and just maintains the flat rate there, then how could that be inflationary in the second year?
Well, because it could be a process of many years. I mean, that's a couple of things are. One is if it comes in quickly and it's over and done, then yes, very likely it's a one-time thing, like an oil shock, a one-time oil shock where the price comes back down, it goes through the system. It doesn't raise inflation, just raises prices once. But if you have a process that goes on multiple shocks for years, for example, or if the shocks are very large, that kind of thing. And I think, again, we have to be conscious of the current situation, which is people haven't seen 2% flat inflation for some years now, and it's different from what it was in 2018 when we had tariffs earlier, when we actually cut rates. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying we're not reacting at all to this. It's a risk we feel like as the people who are supposed to keep stable prices for the benefit of the American people, we need to manage that risk too. That's all we're doing. We're not deciding what to do yet.
Yeah. So if Senator Warner's comment that a tariff is a tax, would that imply that then taxes could be inflationary as well?
No.
So what's the difference between a tax and a tariff then? Or do you disagree with Senator Warner's characterization that tariffs are not taxes?
I wouldn't disagree with that, but it's not the language I use. Look, this is, as I say, one time could be the base case, but in a situation like this where the process could go on for a long time, where the effects could be large or small, it's just something you want to approach carefully in a world where inflation is not back to 2%. And that's our job. If we make a mistake here, people will pay the cost for a long time. And so we're just approaching the question carefully. That's all we're doing. You know that you know, a majority of my committee has said that they do expect to cut rates between now and the end of the year in the remaining 4 meetings. So it's not that we're, you know, taking a strong view that it will be inflation and not a one-time cost increase. It's just that we're going to take a careful approach to that very critical question.
Yeah. Well, let me switch gears on you a little bit. Communist China is our single greatest threat to America's national security and financial independence. Now more than ever, the U.S. must ensure security of our financial systems against Communist China's malign influence. And in 2022, Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs released a report identifying efforts by Communist China operatives to infiltrate the Federal Reserve System. The report contained real-life examples of Communist China's attempts and tactics used to target Federal Reserve officials. In late January, a former senior advisor to the Federal Reserve was arrested on charges that he conspired to steal Federal Reserve trade secrets to benefit and advance Communist China's interests. This Wall Street Journal article from May 2025 details the potential ramifications of his actions. The kind of data and trade secrets that this Federal Reserve employee shared could allow Communist China to manipulate the U.S. market and gain advanced knowledge of changes to the federal funds rate. It could provide Communist China with an advantage when selling or buying U.S. bonds and securities. Chairman, has the Fed Reserve made any changes to strengthen its internal counterintelligence and security protocols since the development of these incidents?
So that's an incident, and I would say we take it very seriously. We have quite elaborate and serious and strict provisions around staff access to information, serious protections for confidential information. We have background checks. We have annual training. We have many of those things. I don't know that we've made any fundamental changes, but we're certainly, you know, sorry, very sorry to see something like this having taken place. And you know, I mean, we're certainly looking at at the protections we have in place.
Great. Well, I have another question, and we'll just submit as a QFR, but I know the chairman said you've got a heart out, so I'll go ahead and yield back my time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Chairman Powell. Good to see you. I want to start by acknowledging the continued uptake of the FedNow real payment system. I know I've raised the development and rollout of that system with you in many, many hearings over many years. We're now about 2 years after launch. I want to continue to work with you and your colleagues to encourage expanded adoption of the capability and capacity so that customers have real-time access to their money. So I just ask that we continue to work on that together. You agree?
I do.
I thought you might. Thank you. So I want to ask you about the student loan situation in the country. And you've talked about this in the past, and you've talked about how it can be a drag on the economy, especially when it gets to be very high in terms of balances that cannot be paid. According to the New York Fed, student loan balances grew by $16 billion to reach $1.63 trillion in the first quarter of this year. Data shows an uptick in the student loan delinquency rate overall, the age of delinquent borrowers, and the number of newly delinquent borrowers. The Department of Education, meanwhile, restarted debt collection activities last month, and starting in July, nearly 2 million borrowers could see their wages being garnished. Meanwhile, here in the Senate, President Trump and Republican senators are working to pass this piece of legislation that would limit affordable loan repayment options and make it harder for borrowers to responsibly repay their debt and get back on a path toward financial health. So, Mr. Chairman, you said before in your testimonies that student loan debt can negatively impact borrowers' ability to fully participate in our economy, and that it can weigh down on the economy overall. Is that still your view?
Yes, it is.
And could you just share your assessment, just from a factual perspective, about how this problem seems to be growing at this point in time, and what would happen if we allow all of these borrowers to default?
So the point I was making, I try hard not to comment on things that aren't Fed policy, but I broke that rule in this case many years ago, and so I'll just say what I said then, which is, you can make all kinds of investments, and you can discharge if you can't pay back the loan, you can discharge it in bankruptcy. The one exception we make is student loans. And I ask whether that is wise national policy. People borrow to invest in their education. That we do not forgive. It seems like something for Congress.
All right, everyone. Thanks for watching here. Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Live testimony there with Fed Chair Jerome Powell in front of a Senate committee. Want to remind you that tonight at 7 p.m. you want to come here to WCNC Plus for a special NBA draft special coverage with our Danielle Stein.